the signal that shook the stars. In the most distant reaches of the galaxy, where starlight dimmed and time itself seemed to linger, a quiet world whispered of ancient peace and older fears. The Hilari, serene and wise, lived among glistening, crystal cities that floated atop golden clouds, untouched by war for generations. But now, their skies ignited with fire, and trembling hands reached out into the cold abyss, broadcasting a signal born of desperation. It was a message not meant for just anyone. This was a beacon of the ancients, crafted in the age of the First Great Union, encoded to reach only those sworn to defend the galaxy in its final hour. The enemy that returned was not merely an empire, not a race, but something worse. A storm of oblivion known in the oldest myths only as the Null. Not conquerors, erasers. They left behind no ruins, no remnants, not even ash. The Hilari had prayed the legends were exaggerations. Now, as their skies bled red, they knew they were not. Hylian Prime, their jewel world, lay exposed beneath the growing shadow. The Council of Elders, helpless before this force, understood no defense fleet would be enough, no pact strong enough to stand alone. So with solemn dread, they activated the ancient signal, praying to stars and spirits that the great powers would hear. The Varnak, with their sun-forged dreadnoughts, the Galari, who walked among energy, the Synth-born, memory-bonded across eons. These were the names whispered in hope. These were the allies they expected. But the galaxy had changed. The message swept outward, across crumbling comm-buoys, abandoned relays, long-forgotten watchposts. It echoed through silence and time until it reached an orbiting outpost, skimming the edge of Earth's solar system. The station, a rusting relic from the days of early space expansion, staffed by bored technicians counting down retirement, caught a flicker, an anomaly, encrypted, urgent, not in any human tongue. Still, protocol dictated investigation. Within hours, Earth's Central Defense Intelligence cracked the cipher, or enough of it to see the danger. Footage spilled out. A paradise planet engulfed in flame, cities shattered mid-air, cries of languages no linguist recognized. And one phrase, looped over and over, like a prayer shouted into a storm. To our allies, we beg you, help us. The Null has returned. Inside the halls of Earth's Defense Command, the footage played on a loop. Silence fell. Some urged inaction. Earth wasn't part of the old alliance. This wasn't humanity's war, but others argued that if this force could destroy worlds far beyond human technology, it would eventually reach them too. Neutrality would be suicide. The debate was long. The silence after, longer. And then, the vote. Earth would not wait. Earth would not run. On Hylian Prime, burning towers crumbled beneath the weight of alien fire. The Council, breath held, waited for answers. From the stars, no Varnak, no Galari, no Synth-born. Then, one young advisor gasped. A reply had arrived, but not from the old powers. It came from a race the Hilari barely knew, from a world so young it was still marked on most star maps in pale blue ink. Humans. The message was brief, calm, frightening in its simplicity. Message received. Help is on the way. Confusion rippled through the council chamber. Humans? What could they possibly offer against the Null? They had no deep alliance, no place in ancient treaties, no known fleets beyond their system's edge. But the time for questions ended swiftly. The deep space sensors flared, detecting warp entries not from the galactic core, but from beyond, the rim. Dozens, then hundreds of vessels, sleek and sharp-edged, burned toward Hilari space. They flew no familiar banners. Their designs were harsh, dark, functional. Engines pulsed like predator hearts. Then the new signal came, unmistakable. Black. Shield Fleet, humanity's first response division. The Hilari gaped at their screens. Was this real? Could they trust their eyes? And then the first warship dropped from warp. It was massive, twice the size of the Hilari's largest sky fortress, arriving near the fractured moon of Lurian. Without hesitation, it locked weapons, targeted a null carrier, and fired. The carrier didn't burn. It ruptured, split in two by a concentrated kinetic lance fired with terrifying precision. From that moment, everything changed. No sign of the other great powers. No reply from the ancient alliance, but Earth had come. The Hilari watched in awe as humans engaged, not like rookies, not like explorers, but like veterans of countless unseen wars. There was no panic, no delay, just cold efficiency. Each strike landed exactly where it needed to. Each formation moved like they had trained for this specific foe for decades. Whispers grew louder among the council. Who were these Deathworlders? How had they prepared so well? How could a species so new fight like this? The answers for now could wait. What mattered was simple. The humans had come, and they had come to fight. In orbit, their ships spread like a steel web, forming kill zones and fallback corridors with practiced ease. The Null struck with fury, but found themselves matched, even outmaneuvered. Human warships, though fewer in number, hit like hammers and moved like ghosts. One vessel, larger than all the rest, became the centerpiece of the battle. Its name, Gravehammer. Hilari tacticians stared as it tore through Null formations, its twin plasma lances slicing through the black fortress ships like blades through silk. Around it, human fighters darted like deadly insects, swift, quiet, lethal. Not one move wasted. How are they doing this? A young Hilari whispered. They have no shared tech, no alliance intel. They shouldn't even know the Null's weak points. Elder Rental said nothing. But deep inside, something stirred. A memory buried beneath centuries of peace, a whisper from long ago, of a world far off, born in fire, of beings forged in relentless struggle, a warning once dismissed as myth, not myth. Memory. He watched the Gravehammer rip through another enemy line. On its bridge, Captain Elias Ward stood at the command table, bathed in red light and shifting tactical holograms. His voice remained, calm, eyes focused. They're testing our flanks, he said. Typical Null pattern, rotate shield banks, shift to coil-fed kinetics. Gun deck 4, hold volley until mark, let's bait the lead ship into overextending. He sipped coffee from a dented metal mug. To him, this wasn't the apocalypse. It was Tuesday. His XO, a scarred woman named Rane, raised a brow. The Hilari? They can observe, learn, but we're not here for praise. His tone dropped, eyes narrowing. We're here to stop an extinction event, and stop it they would. Below, cities still crumbled. But above, a new kind of shadow spread, one not of doom but of defiance. The silhouettes of human warships crossed the smoke-filled sky like silent promises. The Hilari, once elegant and untouched by war, now bloodied and desperate, stared upward in silence. Not at saviors, not at guests, at warriors. No one had expected the humans to come. Certainly not to come first, and no one had imagined they'd come like this. Silent, precise, relentless. The Null weren't easy to destroy. Their biomechanical vessels absorbed most weaponry, regenerating faster than most fleets could fire. But somehow, the humans already knew where to strike, how to punch through armor, how to make them bleed. They didn't hesitate, they didn't waver, and they didn't lose. Because the last time the Null came, Earth nearly died. On the ground, Hilari soldiers and civilians watched in stunned silence as waves of black Null drones were shredded by human drop teams. heavily armed, heavily armored figures who neither shouted nor hesitated. They moved like shadows, clearing streets with eerie precision. Every movement was calculated, every target pre-selected. It was as if they had been preparing for this exact enemy for decades. A young Hilary medic named Holly crouched behind broken stone as a Null stalker crept toward her, thought her life was over. Then, in a burst of smoke and thunder, a tall human soldier dropped between them. His black armor gleamed, his blade glowed. In one swift motion, he split the Null in two. Turning to her, he said just two words, "On your feet." She stared at him, his blood-splattered armor, the visor that showed no face, and the strange insignia, a skull encased in a star. Something inside her shifted. It wasn't fear of the Null anymore. It was fear of what had arrived with the humans. In orbit, more human ships deployed. Platforms and tactical satellites launched, intercepting Null movements with terrifying precision. Intercepted Null signals showed something unseen before: hesitation. The creatures were pulling back, not because they were losing, but because they had encountered the unexpected, something dangerous. The humans were not defenders, they were survivors, and survivors don't fight to win. They fight so they never lose again. The Hilary High Council sent messages of gratitude, requesting alliance and understanding. Only one reply came: cold, simple, final. "This is not your war anymore. Stay behind the line. We will handle the dark." And with that, Earth had claimed the battlefield. The galaxy had called for aid. What it got was something older, something deadlier, something even the dark feared. As smoke cleared from Hylian Prime and the gunfire faded, the galaxy struggled to comprehend what had just occurred. Not even the Council of Ancient Races had anticipated humanity's return. So sudden, so devastating, so silent. It was as if they had been waiting for this moment. Inside the Galactic Council's halls, messages streamed across the stars, some begging for clarity, others demanding explanations. But a few, the ancient ones who remembered, whispered warnings. In shadowed corners, long ago, humanity had vanished from the galactic stage without a word. They retreated behind the boundaries of the Sol system, building not walls of stone, but of silence. They stopped answering the Council's calls, even during the darkest crises. Now, nearly a century later, Earth's ships had returned. Not as diplomats or allies, but as something else. Not under flags of peace, under silence and steel. As hunters who walked into the fire with no fear, who destroyed the most feared enemy in the galaxy as if it were routine. In a private chamber aboard the Hilary flagship, Elder Renal faced Captain Elias Ward. His voice was careful, respectful, but his eyes betrayed fear. "You must understand, Captain," Renal said slowly. "We've never seen anyone fight the Null like this. The Council will demand to know how Earth prepared." Captain Ward, in a dark uniform devoid of rank or metal, only the silver emblem of a human skull surrounded by 13 stars, stared silently at the map showing the Null retreating across 4 systems. Then, in a voice colder than space, he answered, "We didn't prepare for them." Renal frowned. "Then how—" "We fought them before," Ward cut in. Renal's face twisted in disbelief. "Impossible. The first recorded Null incursion was 70 years ago." "For you," Ward said, eyes narrowing, "but they came to us earlier, and no one came to help." Silence, heavy with truth. Back then, the galaxy had scorned Earth, called humans reckless, emotional, unstable. When Earth's distress signal went out, no one responded. The Council debated, the Allies delayed, and by the time they acted, it was too late. But Earth had survived. And in that survival, something fundamental had changed. Out beyond souls, Rim, hidden in the gravity wells of moons and gas giants, humanity had built in secret. Stations, training centers, weapons platforms, all powered by technologies the Council couldn't comprehend, all invisible, all silent. It was as if Earth had sworn a vow. Never again would they ask for help. Never again would they show their hand. As Ward left the chamber, his boots echoed through the Hilari ship's steel corridor. Along the walls stood his soldiers, tall, silent, encased in black. They didn't move. They didn't speak. They weren't soldiers in any traditional sense. They were something older. Deep inside the Gravehammer's core, a file pulsed. A secret. Archive. Project Revenant. It contained old recordings, grainy, violent footage of the First War, null creatures breaching ships, soldiers screaming, planets burning. And what came after? It was the origin of Earth's true army. Not built by governments, not bound by treaties, forged in silence, under a command so hidden that even most humans didn't know it existed. Terran Cold Command. They had one rule: fight. What others feared to name. Now, the galaxy had named the enemy. But Earth had named it long ago. Panic spread in the council chambers. The Null regrouped. Colonies fell. And the only force stopping them was a fleet no one fully understood. Where had Earth been? What weapons had they built? Why did they know the Null so well? And why now? Only one transmission responded to the Council's request for a briefing. This is not a war you can win. This is not a war you understand. We are not here for you. We are here for them. As the signal cut, fear spread, not of the Null, but of what humanity had become. Far from the battlefields, in the system called Sul, there was a silence deeper than space. No probe, no spy. No ship had crossed its borders in 100 years. The space around Earth, once dismissed as primitive, now radiated unreadable signals and cloaked shadows. And now, Earth had returned, powerful, prepared, silent. On the command deck of the Gravehammer, Captain Ward stood watching a holographic map of Sol. Not just planets, but hundreds of hidden stations, cloaked satellites, structures orbiting moons, stars, asteroids, all invisible, all shielded. Commander Arin stood beside him, one of the few allowed to speak freely. "Do we tell them?" she asked. "The Council? They want to know how we did this without them knowing." Ward didn't blink. "They don't need to know what was sacrificed. Only what's coming, the truth. Earth changed after the First War. No help came. Billions died. Cities were erased. And in the aftermath, Earth made a vow. Never again. They would become untouchable, untraceable, unmatched. The Galaxy called it isolation. Earth called it preparation. They dug into the moon to hide war factories, cloaked Mars in defense rings, turned mining colonies into brutal training worlds, built AI smarter than fleets, hid cannons in Jupiter's storms, created labs near Pluto that broke every known rule. They didn't follow the galaxy's laws. They made their own. Inside a Terran command center, Ambassador Veltran was granted a glimpse. Not the full arsenal, but enough. He stood wordless before the simulation of Sol's outer defense. Thousands of drones, mines, satellites, a wall that responded with lethal precision to the slightest deviation. "This," he whispered. "This isn't defense. This is a fortress." Ward's eyes were like steel. "No, this is a warning." "But why stay silent? Why hide?" Veltran asked. Ward stepped closer. "Because no one listened when we screamed. So we stopped screaming and started preparing." Meanwhile, Null attacks continued. Colonies disappeared. Signals were lost. No help came in time. And the pleas that reached Terran space echoed with the same desperate words, "Help us." But Earth didn't respond to all of them, only some, because now they didn't fight for politics. They didn't fight to be liked. They fought for survival. And they fought their way. Survival, vengeance, balance. As the Gravehammer slipped into warp, headed for a null-infected sector on the edge of known space, its crew prepared in silence, armor locked into place, weapons loaded, minds focused, not on glory, but on finishing, something that had begun long ago in betrayal and fire. Far behind them, high above Earth, something ancient stirred. A massive shape, long forgotten, moved through the black. It was a ship, buried beneath Earth's oceans for decades, now rising, for the first time in a century. Its name was simple: Oblivion. And with its return came a fear that rippled far beyond the null, because whatever secrets Earth had buried, they weren't done revealing them. As dawn lit the Atlantic Ocean, waves around a remote sector began to tremble, not from storms, not from tectonic unrest, but from something ancient, something buried deep below the sea, something never meant to rise again, unless the world faced a threat so great that only humanity's darkest weapon could answer the call. That time had come. Metal broke the surface. Water hissed into steam. Global defense networks lit up, not with attack warnings, but activation alerts. Project Oblivion had awakened. Humanity's oldest, most dangerous warship rose like a titan from the grave, larger than any current vessel, older than any ship still in service. Forged during the First War against the Null, before Earth was abandoned, before peace was even imaginable, its blackened hull bore scars from a time when humanity stood alone on the edge of extinction. Most Terran officers had only heard rumors, whispers, passed through generations of soldiers, of a ship so powerful, so brutal, that it had to be hidden. Not because its weapons were deadly, but because they were cruel. Inside Terran Command, Captain Elias Ward watched in silence as satellite feeds streamed the event. Oblivion rose through churning waves, its engines igniting like a city set aflame. Its shape, long and wide, a floating fortress, forged like a sword to cut planets. Beside him, Commander Alatran watched, pale-faced. "Are we really doing this?" she asked. "Bringing that back?" Ward didn't blink. "The Null have taken 5 sectors in 3 days. Entire species. Gone. No one else can stop them." "But Oblivion isn't just a warship," she whispered. "No," Ward said. "It's a message, and the galaxy needs to hear it." As Oblivion rose into the sky, Terran engineers reactivated systems one by one. Reactors hummed, deep cores spun to life. Weapon bays unlocked with slow, final clicks, each one sending chills down the spines of every technician listening. Even the most advanced Terran ships didn't carry tech like this, because Oblivion's arsenal had been banned, forbidden by the Galactic Council. Tech so far beyond the line of science, it veered into nightmare. At the heart of the ship pulsed the core remnant, a power system so unstable it had once torn a moon apart to destroy a null hive. After that, when Earth called for aid, the Council responded with punishment instead of praise. So Earth buried the ship, until now. News of Oblivion's return spread across the galaxy faster than light. Panic followed. Council members demanded explanations. Emergency meetings were called. But not to address the Null. They were preparing defenses against Earth, because if humanity was truly resurrecting its darkest legend, it meant only one thing. They were ready to break every rule again. On a dying world called Delar Prime, where Null forces crushed the last defenses of the alien Torvine, a white-hot light tore through the sky. Thunder cracked. Heat scorched the upper atmosphere, and the clouds screamed as Oblivion arrived. It gave no warning, no broadcast. It acted. Thousands of Null warships met a fury they had never imagined. Plasma rounds that exploded into micro-black holes. Missiles that changed direction mid-warp. drones that moved like ghosts, faster than sensors could follow. The Torvine, half dead in their bunkers, thought a god had come. But gods don't come in silence. Only humans. Aboard Oblivion, Captain. Ward gave no speech, no promise. "Clear the sky," he ordered. And the sky obeyed. Within minutes, the null swarm was gone, burned, broken, erased. When the Torvine tried to send thanks, no reply came. Because for Earth, this wasn't a rescue. It was a statement. They were back. They were angry. And they had Oblivion. Far from the battlefield, in the polished halls of the Galactic Council, panic swept through order. In a chamber that once brimmed with calm and pride, silence fell. Tense glances, whispers thick with dread. The Council had believed for decades that laws and treaties kept the galaxy safe, but Oblivion shattered that illusion. Earth had become something they no longer understood, something they had ignored for too long. Now it was too late. Ambassador Veltrin, tall and pale green, stood at the center of the hall. "We must not underestimate Earth," he said. "Their silence was not weakness. It was preparation." Some nodded. Others whispered blame, accusing humanity of breaking peace with hidden fleets and forbidden weapons. But the true fear came from one undeniable truth. Earth no longer asked permission, and Earth no longer followed Council law. Behind closed doors, the Council's war commanders gathered in private chambers. They watched real-time feeds from front lines where null swarms clashed with the newly awakened human fleet. Commander Rylak, a veteran of a dozen wars, stared at the screen. "They fight with a rage we've never seen," he said. "Brutal, precise, unmatched." General Krieve shook his head, frustration thick. "We tried to help them, long ago, but they turned away. Now they return, not as allies, but as a storm." The Council faced an impossible realization. Humanity had become both threat and hope, an unpredictable force that could either save the galaxy or burn it down. No one knew which would come first. Then came the message, encrypted, direct from Earth. No rhetoric, no apology. "Stop the null, or face humanity's wrath." The Council. Members stared in silence. No one knew what humanity's wrath truly meant, but the meaning was clear. The old rules were gone. Back on Earth, Ward watched intercepted Council transmissions, his expression unreadable, but a small smile tugged at the edge of his mouth. They had underestimated humans for too long. They thought Earth was quiet, weak, alone. They were wrong. Now, with Oblivion leading the charge, Earth was no longer asking to join the galactic stage. They were rewriting it. Above scorched starscapes and battle-blackened voids, the human warship Oblivion moved like a myth. Cold blue lights flickered across its command bridge. Screens glowed with the end of one era and the birth of another. Because this wasn't just survival, this was reckoning, and it could no longer be stopped. Captain Ward stood motionless, staring at the remaining Null fleet regrouping for one final attack. Despite their losses, thousands of ships gone, they kept coming, desperate, mad, willing to throw everything they had at the humans in a last effort to crush them. But Earth's response was something the galaxy had never seen. With one raised hand, Ward gave the order, and all around the battlefield, Earth's reinforcements arrived. Dropping from warp came dreadnoughts, stealth cruisers, orbital cannons, and ancient Terran relics, refitted, rearmed, reawakened. Ships that had slept for 100 years now answered Earth's call with terrifying power. Null commanders screamed across channels. Red energy signatures filled their sensors. The humans had surrounded them, and then the first wave of kinetic strikes hit. Silent, invisible, deadly. Destroyers torn apart in seconds, flagships crippled before they could react. On the Council's secure channel, leaders watched in horrified. All once, they had called Earth a death world best forgotten. Now they saw the truth. Earth had never been weak, only waiting. Marines landed on null flagships, black and silver armor gleaming, weapons humming with energy. Wherever they touched down, the fighting ended. Fast, because humans weren't there to talk. They came to end it. Even Cathrex, the monstrous, proud leader of the Null, realized too late the scale of his mistake. As his command ship split apart under Earth's iron rain, his final words weren't commands. They were screams. Back aboard Oblivion, Ward watched the last enemy signals vanish. Slowly, he turned to his crew. His voice steady as starlight. "It's over. We didn't come for glory. We came because no one else would." Silence fell. The Null Empire was broken. The war was over. But the galaxy would never forget. Not the Council. Not the survivors. Not the silent observers in distant systems. Because Earth had answered a call that was never meant for them. And in doing so, they reminded the galaxy why. Deathworlders were feared. Later, when the flames cooled and the stars dimmed, the Council sent a message to Earth. Not with threats, not with demands, but with respect and apology. They had misjudged humanity, feared the wrong things. Earth's reply was brief. "We will fight when others run. Remember that." And so the galaxy changed. Not through treaties, not through words, but through fire, through forgotten ships, and through the will of a people who had survived their own world long before they ever reached the stars. From that day forward, whenever the galaxy was in danger, when hope failed and allies turned away, everyone would remember what happened when the Deathworlders came.